Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into something pretty amazing?
I am.
Today we're tackling neuroplasticity,
Yeah.
and you guys sent in some really cool stuff for this one.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some seriously heavy-duty scientific papers,
Okay.
research on how future teachers learn and think, even explorations of brain injuries. And
Yeah.
there were a couple things about using neuroplasticity in AI.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a mix.
It is. So
Yeah.
we're going to break down what neuroplasticity is and
Excellent.
how it affects you.
Mm-hmm.
Like how you learn new things,
Right.
recover from setbacks,
That,
those sorts of things.
you know what's so fascinating about this field is that it kind of throws out this old idea of a fixed adult brain.
Right.
We used to think that our brains were just set in stone after a certain age.
Yeah, like you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Exactly. But it turns out they're constantly changing.
Really.
Yeah, throughout our whole lives.
It's pretty amazing
It is.
and kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah,
So before we get into all the specifics,
sure.
what exactly is neuroplasticity?
Well, simply put,
Okay.
neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to basically rewire itself. It's this constant process of adaptation and optimization
Right.
where our brains change in response to all sorts of things, from learning something new, a new language, or even recovering from an injury.
So it's like our brains are always being remodeled based on what we experience.
That's a great way to put it.
Cool.
And there are actually two main types of this remodeling going on.
Okay.
The first is synaptic plasticity.
Okay.
And that refers to the strengthening or weakening of the connections between neurons.
Okay.
And then there's structural plasticity, which involves forming entirely new pathways.
Wow.
And even, believe it or not,
What?
the birth of new neurons.
With the new neurons? I thought we just had the ones we were born with.
Yeah, that was the old thinking. But more recent research has shown that neurogenesis,
Which is?
the creation of new neurons, happens in certain parts of the brain.
Yeah.
Like the hippocampus, which is super important for memory.
Wow. So our brains are literally like growing and changing all the time.
They are.
That is incredible. Now, one of the sources that you sent in mentioned London taxi drivers
Oh, yeah.
and how they have larger hippocampi than most of us.
Right.
What's that all about?
It's a really classic example of neuroplasticity in action.
Hmm.
So London taxi drivers,
Yeah.
they're known for having this incredible spatial memory.
Right. They have to know all the streets.
Exactly. They have to navigate this huge maze of streets
Yeah.
without using GPS.
Right.
And studies have found that all of that navigating leads to physical changes in their brains.
Wow.
Specifically, their hippocampi,
Okay.
which is that brain area
Yep.
that's responsible for spatial memory
Okay.
and actually grows larger over time.
So the brains are bulking up in specific areas based on what they do every day.
Precisely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you're always pushing me to learn new things.
Well, you know, it's good for you.
Yeah.
Keeps the brain sharp.
But how does neuroplasticity play into that?
Well, learning is fundamentally about neuroplasticity. Every time you learn a new skill,
Yeah.
new language,
Yeah.
or a new piece of information,
Okay.
you're physically changing your brain.
Wow.
You're forming these new connections,
Okay.
strengthening the ones that are already there. You're essentially rewiring those neural pathways.
So the more I learn, the more I'm shaping my own brain.
Exactly.
All right. Sign me up for that brain gym.
Yay.
Now, one of the sources you sent focused on recovery from brain injuries, like strokes.
Yeah, that was a fascinating one.
How does neuroplasticity factor in there?
It's absolutely crucial, even after an injury.
Yeah.
The brain can rewire itself.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
healthy areas can actually take over
Wow.
the functions of the damaged areas.
Okay.
And new pathways can form to bypass damaged circuits.
So that means that there's always hope for recovery,
There is.
even after a serious brain injury.
Yeah, it's incredible, right?
That's really encouraging.
Yeah.
One of the sources mentioned this technique called constraint-induced movement therapy.
Oh, right, where they restrain the unaffected limb after a stroke.
Yeah.
Right?
Why would limiting movement help?
Well, it might seem counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but it actually forces the brain to adapt. So by restraining the good arm, for example,
Okay.
the brain is forced to find new ways to use the weaker arm.
Whoa, interesting.
It's kind of like pushing the brain out of its comfort zone
Yeah.
and encouraging it to find new routes around the damage.
It's amazing how our brains can find those workarounds even after a setback.
It is.
Okay, so far we've seen how neuroplasticity is involved in learning new things and recovering from injuries.
Right.
But what about mental health?
Okay.
Is there a connection there?
That's a great question, and it's definitely an area where the research is still ongoing. Yeah.
But some studies suggest that decreased neuroplasticity might be linked to things like depression and anxiety.
Right.
So how does that work?
Well, it's a complex topic.
Sure.
But one theory is that if the brain isn't as adaptable, it might have a harder time adjusting to stress and change. And that could contribute to mental health challenges.
So it's like our brains get stuck in a rut and can't find new pathways to cope.
Yeah, in a way.
Okay.
But the good news is, just like with learning and injury recovery, we can potentially use neuroplasticity to help.
Really?
Yeah, one of the sources you sent in mentioned BDNF.
Oh, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Right, exactly.
I remember reading that BDNF is like fertilizer for the brain.
That's a great analogy.
Does that sound right?
It does.
Okay.
So BDNF helps neurons grow and thrive.
Okay.
Research has actually shown that certain activities can boost BDNF levels.
Like what?
Well, exercise is a big one.
Okay.
And even some antidepressants. And this could enhance neuroplasticity and have a positive impact on mental well-being.
So taking care of our physical health can actually impact our brain's ability to adapt.
It can.
I love that.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
But you also mentioned that neuroplasticity isn't always a good thing.
Right.
What did you mean by maladaptive plasticity?
Yeah, so it's important to remember that not all brain changes are beneficial.
Okay.
Sometimes the brain tries to adapt, but it can actually lead to negative outcomes.
Like what?
Well, for example, in chronic pain conditions, the brain can actually become hypersensitive to pain signals.
Really?
Yeah. So the pain can actually feel worse over time.
So it's like the brain's wiring goes haywire.
Yeah.
And amplifies the problem instead of fixing it.
Exactly.
It's kind of scary.
It is. That's why it's so important to understand how to harness neuroplasticity for good.
Right. Make it work for us, not against us.
Exactly.
So let's get practical. What are some ways we can encourage positive changes in our brains?
All right. So several of the sources mentioned non-invasive brain stimulation.
Like TMS and TDCS.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, break those down for us.
So they sound pretty futuristic.
They do.
But they're becoming more and more common. TMS uses magnetic pulses to stimulate certain brain areas.
Okay.
While TDCS uses a weak electrical current.
So we're basically giving the brain a little nudge.
Yeah, in the right direction.
To promote those positive changes?
Exactly.
It's like jump-starting those brain circuits.
I like that.
What about cognitive training?
Cognitive training. It's like taking your brain to the gym.
Okay.
So it involves doing mentally challenging activities that target specific cognitive functions.
So like memory and attention.
Exactly.
Problem solving.
Yeah, all of those.
So brain training apps, Sudoku puzzles.
Right.
Learning new languages.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
The key is to challenge yourself.
Okay.
Keep your brain engaged.
Keep learning new stuff. And the research is promising.
It is. Studies show that cognitive training can lead to real improvements in brain function.
Wow.
And might even help protect against age-related decline.
I love that I can train my brain just like I train my body.
You can.
And what about virtual reality? How does that fit in?
VR is actually becoming a really exciting tool for harnessing neuroplasticity.
How so?
Well, it allows us to create these immersive, interactive environments that can be tailored to specific needs.
So, for example, stroke patients could practice movements in a virtual world.
Exactly.
And people with phobias could confront their fears.
Right, in a safe setting.
That's amazing.
It is.
So the beauty of VR is that it makes therapy more engaging and effective.
And by immersing ourselves in these virtual worlds,
Yeah.
we're essentially tricking our brains into thinking that these experiences are real.
Wow.
Which can lead to real changes in brain wiring.
It's amazing how technology can be used to help our brains rewire themselves.
It really is.
But let's not forget the basics.
Right.
What are some everyday things we can do to support neuroplasticity and brain health?
Right. Good question.
Yeah, it feels like we've covered so much already.
We have.
But I know there's more to the story.
There is.
What about those everyday things that we can all do to keep our brains healthy and adaptable?
You're right. There's actually a lot we can do. It's not all about fancy technology.
Right.
Lifestyle plays a huge role in neuroplasticity.
Okay.
Think of it this way. You wouldn't expect a plant to thrive without sunlight, water, good soil.
Of course not.
Right. Our brains are the same way.
Yeah.
They need the right conditions.
So what are some of those essential ingredients for a healthy brain?
Well, exercise is definitely at the top of the list.
Okay.
It's like Miracle-Gro for the brain.
Right.
It increases blood flow, boosts those BDNF levels we talked about.
Right, the brain fertilizer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it can even help new brain cells grow.
So hitting the gym isn't just good for my body.
Nope.
It's a brain workout, too.
It is a brain workout.
I like that.
Aim for at least 30 minutes
Okay.
of moderate intensity exercise most days of the week.
Okay.
And remember,
Yeah.
your brain loves variety,
Okay.
so mix it up. So try dancing, hiking, swimming, whatever gets you moving and your heart pumping.
All right. I'm adding brain workout to my to-do list.
Good.
Good. What about diet?
Diet. So important.
Are there certain brain-boosting foods
There are.
we should be eating?
Absolutely.
Okay.
A healthy diet is crucial for brain health.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Think Mediterranean style.
Okay.
Lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains,
Okay.
lean protein, healthy fats.
Okay.
Those all provide the nutrients and antioxidants that your brain needs.
So it's not just about avoiding the junk food. It's about actually feeding my brain the good stuff.
Exactly.
Okay. What about sleep?
Sleep.
I know. I definitely feel foggy when I don't get enough.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
Sleep is so essential.
Yeah.
It's like hitting the reset button for your brain. During sleep, your brain is consolidating memories,
Okay.
clearing out toxins,
Wow.
repairing itself.
Okay.
Aim for 7 to 8 hours
Okay.
of quality sleep each night.
All right.
That's non-negotiable for a healthy brain.
No more late-night Netflix binges for me.
Good.
Okay. And finally, stress.
Stress.
It feels like it's everywhere.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How does stress impact neuroplasticity?
Yeah. How does it?
Chronic stress
Yeah.
is really bad news for your brain. It can actually damage brain cells.
Really?
It can impair your cognitive function and even shrink certain brain areas.
Wow. Okay, so stress management
Stress management is crucial.
is super important.
Absolutely.
So finding ways to relax and de-stress isn't just about feeling good.
Yep.
It's about actually protecting my brain.
Exactly.
So what are some good strategies?
Well, it really depends on what works for you.
Okay.
It could be meditation, yoga, spending time in nature, listening to music. Anything that helps you unwind and let go of that tension.
Okay, so we've got exercise, diet, sleep, and stress management.
The 4 pillars.
The 4 pillars of a brain-healthy lifestyle.
There you go.
Now, before we wrap up,
Okay.
there's one more thing I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
That paper about using neuroplasticity principles in AI.
Oh, yeah. That was a fascinating one.
It was pretty dense.
Yeah.
But also kind of mind-blowing.
It was. It really was.
So what was that all about?
Well, scientists are exploring how to incorporate the principles of neuroplasticity,
Okay.
like synaptic and structural plasticity,
Right.
into AI systems.
So instead of programming AI with like fixed rules, we could design it to learn from experience
Exactly.
and modify its own behavior.
That's the idea.
That's pretty wild.
It is. It's still early days.
Okay.
But there's already been some really interesting progress. Researchers are developing AI that can actually learn new tasks,
Wow.
solve problems creatively, and even adapt to changing environments.
And that's all thanks to...
All thanks to those neuroplasticity principles we've been talking about.
Wow. It's both exciting
Yeah,
and a little bit daunting
it is.
to think about the possibilities.
Yeah.
But for now, let's focus on what we can control,
Right.
our own brains. We've covered so much ground today.
We have.
Is there one key message you hope our listeners will take away from all of this?
Absolutely. I want everyone listening to understand that your brain is not fixed. It's dynamic.
Right.
It's ever-changing.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the power to shape it.
Wow.
You're not stuck with the brain you were born with. You can actively sculpt it through your experiences. Okay.
Your actions, your lifestyle choices.
That's such an empowering message.
It is, isn't it?
It means we have a responsibility to take care of our brains.
Right.
And make choices that support their growth.
Absolutely.
Any final words of wisdom?
Yes, embrace the journey of lifelong learning.
Okay.
Keep challenging yourself. Stay curious and never stop exploring. Your brain is capable of incredible things.
It is.
Treat it well and it will reward you.
That's a fantastic note to end on.
It is.
To all of our listeners.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into neuroplasticity.
It's been fun.
We hope you've learned some valuable insights.
Yeah.
About your own brain and its amazing potential.
It's incredible.
Keep those synapses firing.
Yes.
And we'll see you in our next deep dive. See you then.